again. I'm Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. Russia has detained a dual citizenship holder on suspicion of treason and funding of the Ukrainian army. The woman, 33 years of age with U.S.-Russian citizenship, has been detained in Russia by the Federal Security Service. Officials say she was arrested in the city of Yekaterinburg. The Federal Security Service says she was raising funds for a Ukrainian organization whose ultimate beneficiary was Kyiv's armed forces. She was also accused of attending pro-Ukraine rallies in the United States. She was reported to have been collecting money for the Ukrainian organization since February 2022, when Russia first launched its full-scale military operation in the country. It said the funds were subsequently used to purchase medical supplies, equipment, weapons, and ammunition for the Ukrainian army. In another development, the family of a late Putin critic Alexei Navalny has allegedly been told his body will not be released for another 2 weeks. A family representative says Russian authorities informed Navalny's mother that his body is being held for chemical analysis. They've not confirmed where Navalny's body is being held and have repeatedly shut down efforts to locate it, while his widow is accusing them of hiding it. The late Navalny's wife, Yulia Navalnaya, has accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of killing her husband and is alleging that his body is being kept until traces of poisoning by the nerve agent Novichok have worn off. To the Russia-Ukraine war, Sweden has announced plans to provide a record $683 million in aid to Ukraine. Defense Minister Paul Johnson made the announcement, noting that continuous support for Ukraine is crucial for safeguarding both Swedish and Ukrainian security. Outlining Sweden's commitment to standing with Ukraine for as long as it takes, Mr. Johnson says the package meets some of Ukraine's most pressing needs and will include artillery, ammunition, air defense weapons, anti-tank missiles and grenades, hand grenades and grenade launchers. Canada's Minister of Defense, Bill Blair, says his country plans to donate around 800 drones to help Ukraine fight Russia's invasion. During a press briefing in Toronto, Mr. Blair said the Sky Ranger R-70 drones will help Ukrainian frontline troops assess targets and threats quickly with accuracy and effectiveness. The drones are part of a $370 million aid package pledged to Ukraine by the Canadian government in June last year. Overall, the country has provided $1.78 billion worth of assistance to Kyiv since February 2022, including tanks, armored vehicles, and artillery. International pressure is, however, growing on the United States to act on more funding for Ukraine. President Joe Biden has accused House Republicans of making a big mistake in not responding to Russian aggression with more security aid. To the front lines in the war now, the Ukrainian Air Forces say that they shot down 2 Russian fighter jets in the eastern part of the country. The 2 aircrafts destroyed were an Su-34 and an Su-35S. Ukraine's armed forces also repelled Russian attacks towards the southeastern region of Zaporizhia in what they described as a difficult night. The fall of Avdiivka in the eastern Donetsk region has made the Ukraine military step up its monitoring campaign on how Russian forces are regrouping and preparing for their next move. The VOA's Anna Chelikova joins us now. She's in Kyiv. Anna, great to see you, and I can see your emotion. How significant is the downing of the Russian military jets by Ukraine in this war?
Well, good evening. Definitely, this is something that, which is always a success for Ukraine, to either destroy jet or destroy boat or destroy tank. Definitely any equipment is a great success, but especially if we're talking about jets, because definitely this is something that, well, this is something that Ukraine needs to get, this advantage in the air. And at this point, we can see that Russia actually has advantage in the air in certain, especially in the certain parts of the front line. So every time Ukraine manages to destroy a jet, is definitely something that makes it, at least gives additional opportunity to Ukraine to get closer to this either equality in the sky or even getting advantage at some point.
And as feared by the US President Joe Biden, Advika has fallen to the Russian forces. The impact, how much of it does it have on the ongoing war in Ukraine?
Well, it's important, indeed, and well, it has a direct impact. So with the support, Ukraine is able to fight. Without support, it gets very, very difficult. And even if, as we can see, the delay in the support creates additional difficulties for Ukraine because, well, according to experts and even President Zelensky himself also mentioned that due to this delay, Ukraine, well, had much more difficulties in Avdiivka, as we've seen just recently, the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops. So it's important, and especially timing is important because Ukraine is lacking of time.
Yeah, I can imagine having gone through almost 24 months, for constant bombardment by the Russian military. Ukraine should be a bit weary there. But there is more aid coming in, Anna, and that's coming from Sweden, which has announced $683 million in aid for Ukraine. Canada pledging hundreds of drones for Ukraine, a total of 1.7, I believe, billion in aid since the war started in Ukraine. It must be a booster for the Ukrainian forces, even though, these donations have not reached Ukraine yet. But how are the forces managing with what they've got? How are they keeping up with those Russian attacks?
Well, new information about new aid coming is definitely great news and definitely creates additional, positivity within the society, especially, and within the military for sure. Because at this point, what we're hearing from the front lines that, well, Ukrainians indeed are lacking the aid and lacking the equipment, lacking the ammunition. So, for example, in some parts of the front line, military is saying that they have to actually literally count each missile and rocket they use for the artillery, for instance, because if there is like a possibility to use 7 missiles in a row, they can only use 1 or 2 in order to save this missile, save these rockets for other attacks. So, and especially here, it's important to mention the air defense, because Russian attacks continue every day and massive attacks continue every couple times a week usually, or every week, or a couple times a month. And Ukraine needs this, particularly this equipment for air defense. So yeah, so I mean, this is extremely important, and this is not about it's not about paperwork or about money work. It's about lives. So Ukrainians see it differently, of course, and for Ukrainians, it's even more well, emotionally, difficult to have such delays, because it's about lives and for Ukrainians. And well, this is probably gets even more emotional as the anniversary date is coming. And today, for instance, Ukrainians mark the beginning of basically this big war, which started 10 years ago, because these days, 10 years ago, the first people were killed in Maidan.
What a week it will be for many Ukrainians, Anna, for you and many Ukrainians. Remembering these anniversaries will be quite emotional for many people. We've also been talking about Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition leader who died on Friday. How is this news being received in Ukraine? Does the media talk about it at all?
Definitely, yes. It was discussed a lot. Mr. Navalny had, he had different perceptions, upon him from the Ukrainians. But in general, we can say that he was one of the little group of people who represented the position of the Russian to the Russian government, and even he had certain, not really great, mentions in terms of Ukrainian territorial integrity, but still he was, of course, as a kind of a symbol of Russian opposition. So it is an important event. His death is definitely an important event in terms of, globally, in terms of, rule of law and internal situation in Russia. And it demonstrates a lot, from the inside of Russia. And in Ukraine, it was discussed. However, I cannot say that it was a certain, it was not, I should say, over emotional about that. So people did not really perceived it either too bad or too good. It was just an important event happening globally, and it was perceived this way.
Before his death, was he ever considered a hero of some sort by Ukrainians for speaking up against the Kremlin?
Not really for Ukrainians. So for Ukrainians, he was, as I said, a symbol of opposition. But if we look at at what he said in different years of his active years, sorry for that, but of his active years of opposition, of being in the opposition, in terms of Ukraine, there were different rhetorics, and particularly everyone here in Ukraine remember how he was, what he was saying about Crimea, that it's not a sandwich to give it back and forward. So, in terms of this, he was not really a hero for Ukrainians, but probably an important personality in the Russian politics, as he was one of the opposition leaders, and definitely something that Ukrainians are used to opposition in their country, so of course he was he had an important role in the Russian politics for Ukrainians. But again, what happened, it just happened, and not much was really not much emotions were involved within the Ukrainians.
And when you speak about Russian politics, elections are coming up soon in Russia. Do Ukrainians feel that perhaps if there was a change of government, if Putin was no longer president, that this war perhaps might end?
It's an interesting question, because Ukrainians do not believe that elections could decide this. So Ukrainians do not believe that Putin can be not elected. So basically, Ukrainians, if to be honest, do not believe that elections as we understand it, like international society understands the elections, is possible in Russia. So everyone here believes that Putin will just remain president until he is alive physically. But if answering your question from the other perspective, that if Putin as a personality will not be a president anymore, I think that Ukrainians definitely have this, at least an option that the war could end and certain negotiations could start. But again, here we're talking about physical presence of President Putin, so no one believes that he can be he can be not elected. It's just about his physical existence.
What about President Vladimir Putin? Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine. I mean, this war started just as he was, assuming presidency of Ukraine. Do people ever think of the future, about the political future of the country, whether this is the president who finally takes them not only through the war, but also takes them through the recovery after the war?
Just recent survey just shows that it's like half to half almost. Ukrainians, almost half of the Ukrainians believe that Zelensky should not stay a president after the war ends. And this is the survey numbers. If we are talking, and when we are talking to people, actually a lot of people believe that he is a better president than during the war than he was before the war. So a lot of people believe that probably after the war he should not remain the president, especially considering that Ukraine was supposed to have elections in 2024, but because of war, this election not going to happen. So when the war ends, elections would be the first thing to happen in Ukraine, because in order to keep the legitimacy of the government and of the president. So according to the recent surveys, it looks like that Zelensky will not be able to be re-elected, at least at this point. When we are now, he has not big chances to be re-elected if the elections would take place today.
That's a pretty interesting perspective, Anna. So if, well, there were supposed to be elections this year, are there any contenders, for the polls apart from President Zelensky? I know, people may not have had much time to think about politics, but is there an active political, do apologize, we seem to have lost connections with Anna there. The VOA is Anna Chernikova, reporting for us from Kyiv. Anna, as we saw there, was in transit. We hope that we can reconnect with her to finish up the conversation. But Anna, if you can hear us, we hope you are safe where you are.